Hello everyone, thanks to listen to my talk. I'm really glad to present my contribution, Phygital Museum Experiences, the situated and invisible dimension of technology as a sensitive activation of cultural heritage. The contribution aims at outlining the potential of phygital spaces in the fusion and amplification of cultural heritage, moving on a double perspective. On one hand, the hypertextual narration of material and mostly the immaterial value of cultural heritage. On the other hand, the bodily involvement of visitors as activators of relationship in space. The structure of the presentation starts from some conceptual forward necessary for the framing of the research to enter into the specific of digital technologies analyzed through case studies and so the definition of new perspectives and scenarios. Framing the topic of phygital museum experiences imply first of all defining the agents in the field. Museums. What are the transformations that concern cultural heritage and thus museums as repositories of artifacts? It is necessary to underline two points which are really strongly connecting. The museum as intercultural experience and the value of stories behind the materiality of the artworks on display. In this sense, it is interesting to highlight the updating of the definition of the museum during the ICOM Extraordinary Assembly in August 2022. The innovation that has strengthened are above all the contents of research and interpretation of cultural heritage. The definition said, museums researches, interprets and exhibit tangible and intangible heritage, open to a perspective of overlapping different points of view, and on the other hand, the matter of inclusivity and accessibility, offering a varied experiences thanks to the participation of communities. In this context, and so we can say as is assumption, what emerged is that today's point of view and interest is enhancing the experiences and the stories that are beyond the physical artifact, as a valorization of intangible and narrative components that contextualize or recontextualize the stories of the artwork on display, moving from highlighting the physical collection to highlighting stories and experience, transforming museums into places of experience and dialogue. How, at this point, can the world of Phygital be an opportunity to enhance the narrative component of cultural heritage? We have to think about the concept of Phygital as an integration between the digital layer and the reality, as indissoluble link of the digital technological component but within a real world. And another interesting point related to the phygital concept is about the topic of meta-materiality, starting from the relation of the materiality of the reality to prompt physical action. Thus, what is the meaning of phygital? It is remarkable to note that the term is not associated with the world of exhibition design and cultural heritage in general, but was coined in the field of marketing in 2007 by Chris Will, President and CEO of Australian marketing agency Momentum Worldwide, as the connection between the physical and the digital world, between digital platforms and physical commercial services. In this sense, considering in this field, the topic is declined in the context of the Internet of Things, highlighting the strong link with the physical component, connecting objects that trigger a physical reaction from a digital action or a phygital sensor that when triggered result in a digital output. Thus, the concept of phygital is therefore framed by this overlap with the real physical world, which could generate a gesture from digital input. Starting from this connection, it is possible to recontextualize the term in the definition of phygital heritage, so in the field of cultural heritage, as a possibility of communication, fusion, and enhancement of the narrative of cultural heritage through simultaneous and integrated physical and digital means. The perspective is to use the amplification capabilities of digital technology and the material value of the artifact on display in a dimension where technology and cultural heritage complement each other, could work together. And another point is that the digital component in the phygital world acts as an answer of the materiality of the object on display, thus implementing the dimension of actions, of gesture, of bodily involvement of the visitor, making possible a deep, dense, and intense experience of products, extending in time and space so we can talk about increased materiality or metamateriality. Therefore, once defined the characteristic of the agents in the field, what is the link between the physical world of museums and the digital component integrated into the physical spaces? The link is the narrative. So the exhibition as an assembly in which the physical component and the digital dimension work together as a part of total narrative. And the narrative is characterized as a narrative script, as a complex script, as an overwriting of the space and the artworks. It works as an hypertext. Technology is becoming an increasingly transparent tool for involving the observer using in meta-narrative, the so-called storytelling, potential layers of the cultural narrative that explode or recompose units of meaning. This means to work no longer as a static surface, but as an interactive happening in which the visitor could be involved. Furthermore, the narrative is activated through bodily involvement. And it's interesting to emphasize that when we talk about body and body relations, is declined above all in the concept of tactility, understood as a synthesis of all the sensing, defining touch as an extension of bodily cognitive dimension. Touch involves the interrelation of rhythm, movement, contact, bodily awareness, articulation, and pressure. Thus, we are moving into phygital spaces. How then are phygital spaces designed through a situated and invisible technology? Phygital spaces mainly move through the use of mixed reality means, where the use of mix as a combination of the physical and digital triggers new inhabitant behavior, as to propose the relationship between body, space, physical object, and digital media. Mixed reality can be defined in the dimension of the virtual continuum, anywhere between the extreme of the virtual continuum, a continuum extending from the real to the virtual environment. And what is interesting is the possibility of combining the characteristic of the real and the virtual dimension. So in the first case, in the case of reality, the physical affordance, so the ability to stimulate the physical gestuality, the physicalization as the opportunity to physically transmit digital information, and the situativity as the link with context. On the other hand, the characteristic of the digital world are decline in multisensoriality through different devices, the possibility of personalizing information, and the multimodality as the capacity to amplify different points of view and so set bearing information. Starting from this basis, it is possible to draw a graph of interaction between the agents in the field, the space object, the technology, and the visitor in the phygital heritage model, linking the situativity and so the link with the physical content and the affordance as the ability to stimulate physical action. The graph outlines an augmenting technology as visible information layer which overlaps with the physical space through the use of tools such as augmented reality, in which a communication is established between a physical device and the space activated by the visitors. In the dimension of integrated technologies, the interaction takes place between the space object, in which technology is merged, and the visitor in an invisible dimension of technology. While when we speak about actuated technologies, the digital interface could be shaped directly by the user. And so the dimension of integrated technology, which is what the research focused on, is mainly defined by the concept of tangible interactions as an encompassing sensory experience through which the intangible dimension of cultural heritage can be amplified. Tangible interactions are declined in double binary of embedded and embodied interaction. In the case of embedded interactions, the focus is on the interaction with smart objects through the use of an invisible technologies embedded in the artifact. In the case of embodied interactions, the focus is on the user gesture as the activator of the sensitive environment. And the topic opens up for further reflection. The more technologies is integrated into the space and drives bodily involvement, the more it is possible to imagine interaction as natural, building familiar relationship with space and artifact. The natural interfaces are interactive and reactive devices that use simple human communication methods such as touch, gesture, voice, common objects. Moving through case studies through different references is possible to analyze the integration of digital technologies and the changes in the proxemities of visitors. On the one hand, technologies embodied in smart objects, on the other, technologies embodied in sensitive environments activated by the gesture and bodily movement of visitors. In Whispering Table by the Green Hill Studio, the representation of Jewish dinner is staged thanks to intimate relationship of visitors with traditional objects. By bringing the object close to the ear, they begin to speak, and so it is possible to listen to stories like in an intimate and personal secret, but at the same time, by placing them in context on the table, the objects communicate with each other, involving the visitor as a part of this ritual. In the Lavazza Museum, to accompany the visitor on a journey into Lavazza world can only be the most iconic object of the coffee ritual, the cup. So the visitor received the cup at the beginning of the exhibition, and it represents a unique tool to activate installation, save, capture the moment, and take it with it after the visit, using RFID sensors, so creating an intimate relationship with the object. The gesture became extremely strong in the installation at the Museum Laboratory of the Mind, designed by Studio Azzurro, where the stories of mental institutions are told through the story of patients, inviting visitors to put themselves in the physical habits of those who live this condition, so really simulating their habits. To activate installations, visitor has to feel the movement, the physical movement of the protagonist of the stories. And in this installation, from up close, no one is normal. Along the wall, the protagonist of the story walk, and the visitor can hear the story only by touching the image, dragging it with him as an intimate and familiar gesture. Is there a more human gesture than like holding hands and listening to a secret? Bodily involvement is not limited to activating the contents of the stories in the exhibition, but becomes a work of art itself. We can say your body has consequences, modifying the visual dimension of the space, creating a new relation with the simultaneous involvement of participants. And really interesting in this sense is the work of Atelier Bruckner, Museum of the Future, and in particular the journey of the pioneers as immersive and interactive narratives in the future, where the narrative space exists thanks to the bodily involvement of visitors. The Netherlands Pavilion, designed by Cosman in the Young Studio, is a multisensory journey to discover innovation and sustainability through a pavilion that collects 800 liters of water from the desert air to produce rain. So we can say that it rains stories, innovation, and possibilities into the pavilion, and the stories become high personal, as in a sort of exchange relationship in which the visitor is invited to take part in the process, involving the different sensing and so receiving a symbolic rain at the end. So what are the perspectives? Situated and invisible technologies became an hypertextual layer activated by embodied involvement of visitors. This is made possible above all thinking about natural interfaces as amplification of the role of the gesture, and in this framework, Phygital museum experiences as implementation of tangible and intangible value of the spaces and the artwork. So reaching the point, what are the characteristics of Phygital museum experiences? Situated and invisible technology is mainly in decline in the tangible interactions, which can be activated by the bodily involvement of visitors, but on the other hand, digital technology construct an hypertextual layer and hypertextual narrative that of course is activated by the visitors. And this is with the aim of the amplification of the sensitive layer of tangible and intangible heritage. It's not technology that must provide a surprise effect, but what the artwork is able to tell involving the visitor. So the artworks are the subject that has a symbolic and material force that technologies has to amplify, revealing what is behind, linking storytelling, objects, and bodily involvement. This is the bibliography.